In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to solve two-step worded problems when it comes to fractions. So I have a question here and it says, Mr. Gorfine had 4 meters of sticky tape. He gave 1.5 meters of his sticky tape to Mr. Simmons for a project and then cut up the remaining amount of sticky tape into lengths of 1/5 meters long, each to give out to groups in his class. There's 2 steps. So the first step is saying, how long was each piece of cut sticky tape that he gave to the groups in his class? The next question is, how many groups are there in Mr. Gorfine's class? Otherwise asking, how many pieces of sticky tape? Because if we know how many groups, that will be how many pieces there were. So we are going to need to do A first to then find out B. If we just kind of draw it up to visualize it, you don't always have to do a bar model. So I'm just going to visually draw it. I've got my 4 meters. Yeah, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4 meters. I'm going to give 1.5 of them away. So that's 1.5 of them away. Yep. Then with the remaining amount, I'm going to have to cut them up into 1/5 meters long, and then that will then tell me how many pieces there are. Okay, so part 1 is going to be, I'm going to have to do 4 take away 1.5 to work out first of all how much did I give Mr. Simmons. So to do that, one way I can do it is write the 4 wholes as 4/1. That is one way we can write a whole number as a fraction. When we are subtracting fractions or adding, we always want the denominator to be the same. So here in this case, I think the easiest way to solve it is first of all making this fraction here also an improper, where the top number is bigger than the bottom number. So to do that, I times the whole number by the denominator, so 1 times 2 is 2, then add the numerator, so 2 plus 1 is 3. So it's saying 4/1 take away 3 halves. Now, as I said before, I want the denominators to be the same. So I can actually times 1 by 2 to make it 2. We call this a related fraction. I'm going to have to do the same to the top. So if I've done the bottom by 2, I have to do the numerator by 2. So 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 2 is 2. I don't need to change the 3 halves, so I can keep it the same. Now all I'm doing is doing 8 take away 3, and that gives me 5. So I'll just keep moving over here. So I've got 5/2, and my final step is to bring it back to a proper fraction. Whether it says it in the question or not, you always want to simplify it, and this is part of simplifying. So because the top number is bigger than the bottom, you want to divide it by the bottom. 2 goes into 5 2 times with 1 remainder, and then that gives us 2.5. And we always want to write it as a full sentence. So Mr. Gorfine that's going to be part 1, and then we're going to need to then work out how long each piece is going to be. Sorry, my computer froze a bit and it deleted everything. I'll just keep going. So we had 2.5. So Mr. Gorfine and you write it as a nice sentence, yada yada yada, had 2.5 meters, man, such messy handwriting, of sticky tape to give out to the groups, right? You get the idea. Finally, write that in. A good way to check the answer, because you always should do a check, is we have, 4 take away, if I rounded 1.5 up to maybe 2, because I just added a half. So 4 take away 2 is 2. And 2 and 2.5, yeah, it's very close. So I think it is a close answer. Our second part, that was just a one part question. This is the second part, is then we know that we have 2.5 meters of sticky tape left to hand out to the groups. We want to know how many groups there are, or how many pieces of sticky tape was it cut up into. So remember, we said before, into 1/5 meters each. So it means I now have 2.5 meters of tape, and I want to break it up into 1/5 meters each. So we're going to break it up into 1/5. So what we're saying is we have 2 1/2 divided into 1/5 meters of tape. So when we're doing fractions that have division or multiplication, remember we don't want the denominators to be the same, or it doesn't need to be the same. Instead, we're wanting to simplify first. So to begin with, I'm going to need to make my 2.5 into an improper to begin with, so that it can work better. So we have 2 times 2, which equals 4, plus 1 will be 5 halves, divided by 1/5. And remember, when we're doing times, we can actually, divide, we can change it to times, flip the one on the right. There's now 5 over 1 instead. And now look, can we simplify here? We can't the other way, so it's just 5 times 5 is 25. And then 2 times 1 is 2. We then simplify by dividing the top by the bottom. 2 goes into 24 12 times with 1 remainder. 2 on the bottom. So we've got 12.5 groups. Well, that's how many pieces we had cut up. Great work.